You're listening to WMPG 90.9 Gorham, Portland, Southern Maine Community Radio from USM. Live from the Orion Cygnus arm of the Milky Way galaxy, this is Scientifically Speaking, a weekly half-hour program devoted to elegant curiosities, and I am one of your hosts, Sarah Chang, and joining me as always is Bernie Rhyme, DJ Starwatcher. How are you, Bernie?
Yes, hi Sarah, very good, thank you.
Bernie is our professor of the astronomy lab here at USM and our local protector of the night skies. Reach out to us at WMPGScientificallySpeaking at gmail.com or on Twitter at WMPGSciSpeak, and you can head over to WMPG.org to find the last 5 weeks of archives of all of your favorite shows, including this one. Bernie, could you let our listeners know what is up in the night sky for this coming week?
Yes, certainly. So this will be Friday, July 22nd. It'll be a waning crescent moon coming up around midnight. The last quarter moon was a few days earlier. And then the new moon will be on the 28th. So you have that phase that's coming up, a little bit after midnight. So basically, as you probably know, the nice planetary alignment has broken up a few weeks ago, actually. But you can still see 4 of the planets, and they're still in sequence: Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Saturn's coming up earlier now. It's probably rising by 10:30 or so. It's actually going to be at opposition next month. So you have that. The days are getting quite a bit shorter. Sunrise is 5:12 and sets at 8:11. So we actually lost 36 minutes since the longest day, first day of summer. And then, of course, with Saturn being in opposition in August, which means it comes up at sunset, so you'll be able to see that as an evening planet. And then Jupiter's about a month behind, so that'll be at opposition in September. And Mercury actually will rejoin us, but not in the morning sky. It'll rejoin us in the evening sky by July 26th, so about 4 or 5 more days. You can look for that. And then let me see. Oh, there is an interesting astronomy convention coming up next weekend. So that's July 29th, 30th, and 31st. So that's called Stellafane in Springfield, Vermont. I've been there 7 or 8 times, and some of the people from my astronomy club always go there. So I'll try to go this year. Last year was limited due to COVID, and they didn't have it for a couple of years. Even though it's outdoors, they have some indoor events, obviously. And there's 2,000 or 3,000 people that go there. So that's a big thing people should know about. And then I'm sure everyone knows that 53 years ago, July 20th, so 2 days before, we landed on the moon for the first time, 1969. And basically, I know we did a whole program on this, but the Artemis mission, that's the mythological sister of Apollo, is planning to go to the moon again on a regular basis within 5 or 6 years. They've picked all the astronauts, and we covered them, and what they're going to be potentially finding there and doing that. So we're going back finally after over half a century. Yeah.
Awesome. It's exciting. There's lots of stuff coming up.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yep.
And by the time you're listening to this, I think the images from James Webb Telescope or some of the first ones.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, but since they haven't come in, this is before the 12th. We'll talk about it next time when we know something about it, and we'll add it to some segment or do a whole program on it.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And if you couldn't take notes fast enough, you can also check out the monthly What's Up column in the Portland Press Herald. So welcome to another episode of Scientifically Speaking. We are here today. The show, actually, the title of today's show is called The Future Was Now. Let's go back a little bit in time to the early 20th century. And there was a man named Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, who is Italian, and he is coined as the godfather of Western futurism. He was a founder of kind of this futurism movement, which was essentially this art movement in Italy. And he had a couple of things that were interesting and are very different from modern day futurism, but it does give you a sense of where this movement started. And so one of his quotes is that he said, "We want to free this land from its smelly gangrene of professors, archaeologists, tourist guides, and antiquarians where the numberless museums cover her like graveyards." And he encouraged people to set fire to library shelves and flood museums and wreck the cities. And he was really determined to destroy existing civilized order, to build a future where speed and technology represent man's triumph over nature, and that electricity, the car, and the aeroplane, and the industrial city were the future that we should all strive for. He was also very misogynistic, and he was also against the idea of peaceful coexistence. And so, if you look up the Italian futurism art movement, you will see a lot of kind of war being represented in the paintings, and with airplanes and burning cities, and I had a lot of things like science and technology were gendered as kind of a male, and stars and old science, if you will, were gendered as female. And because of him, he gave birth to other futurists such as Umberto Boccioni, Antonio Sant'Elia, and Luigi Filia. Do you know any of those names?
Never heard of any of
No.
them.
So they were artists of that movement, and essentially it boils down to they really glorified war and electricity, which is a really funny partnership, I guess. But from that movement, there were people that came out of that who had a little bit more of an optimistic and progressive view of things. And in 1975, the president of the World Future Society at the time said, "We cannot go on letting the future just happen to us." And so, from around then, not necessarily then, but sometime after the kind of nihilistic art movement, if you will, came futurism or futuristics, which essentially is a mode of thought to in some ways influence public policy to serve and protect the interests of future peoples. And futurism really focuses on planning, prognostication, future studies, and foresight, and really asks the question: how can we shape the future by forecasting how science and technology will change our lives? How do we predict alternative paths and apply the best lessons of history and develop upon our current world? And how do we develop policies or find policies that ensure that futures are equitable and just? And I think one of the longest running societies has been the World Future Society. It was founded in 1966 and is recognized as the largest, most influential, longest running community of future thinkers in the world. And some of the contributors, you will know some of these names like Carl Sagan, Buckminster Fuller, Alvin Toffler, Herman Kahn. And they essentially, futurists, their work is often underwritten by companies and governments who are trying to prepare for future problems or to try to gain a competitive edge from foresight. And, they also know that these predictions may potentially shape the world ahead. And so, to quote, the main purpose of studying the future is to look at what may happen if present trends continue and decide if this is desirable. If not, how can we work to change it? So I think that's a little bit more of a positive outlook, very different from the Filippo's view of what he felt society should move towards. So, what Bernie and I have for you today is we've got several futurists who are influential. They have interesting predictions, and we want to talk about them with you so that you are familiar with who they are and what some of these ideas are. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about what they had predicted if they were around long enough, right, Bernie? And so I'm going to kick it off to Bernie, who is the first futurist on your list.
Okay, well, we kind of have a list in reverse order. I didn't pick the order. I would have put other people there and so on, and I'd only heard of about half of them. So our listeners may have heard of, maybe about half or fewer. But you already mentioned one of the names. So we'll start from 10 to 1. We'll go in reverse order. So number 10 would be Alvin Toffler. And way back in 1970, he wrote a book called Future Shock, which I have read. And so he came up with some terms like game changer and so on. And he basically was saying that we had like a throwaway society, and as you just mentioned, the whole term of future, we plan things. And I was reminded of like a Native American saying that you have to think 7 generations in advance. So that's the type of thing we have to do much more now, not just the corporates, in it for profit for the next quarter, but not just 1 year, but 7 generations, which is like
Right.
300 years.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's really good, yeah. So, and Toffler just passed away. He was almost 90 years old, and he just passed away. He's probably written more than that one book, but that's the one that was listed and the one that I happen to have read myself.
What was Future Shock about?
I think just basically, I mean, even in 1970, and this is way before the internet or any of that,
Kind of like the
it was
rise of computers and
probably
yeah.
already predicting what some of those type of things could be
Hmm.
doing 20 some years before that
Hmm.
started happening.
Hmm.
So now they have much more accurate predictions and the whole Internet of Things and so on that, everything and every item will become smart. Your refrigerator will tell
Mm.
you when to eat things and what clothing to wear and all this, the stuff that even Alvin could not have thought of way back in 1970. But I should probably reread it if I can find it to
Yeah.
see
It's
how
been a while, right?
ancient that some of that is.
Do
Okay.
when he talks about like a throwaway society,
Mhm.
do you feel like that's a modern issue, or do you feel like people in like the 1800s also like, or not also, but they thought about, you know, the future in those 7 generations as you were talking about,
Well, I
or
think
do you
more
think
so
they were
back
also
then.
kind of throwaway?
Well, no, I think people were saving everything. I mean,
Mm.
even like from World War II, and I have a few friends that were just saving every item in case they might use it for something else,
Mhm.
or if they have to become self-sufficient and can't buy all the stuff. So it kind of makes sense. But now we can do that in conjunction with technology and other interesting things.
Yeah,
But we could
yeah,
never really have a throwaway society. That's never going to help because it's not sustainable and
right, right.
bad for the planet and all that sort of thing.
I do think that Europe does, just from my point of view, does a better job than the U.S. on
Hmm.
trying to enact policies that help to combat that, kind of like what we were talking about, what futurists tried to do, because they have laws, I think, for right to repair. So meaning technology products, so like phones or laptops, uh, companies that produce those have to produce them in a way that you would be able to repair them yourselves, rather than some, like especially some of the MacBooks, they're kind of built in such a way that you can't even open them, and so you have
Yeah.
no way of repairing them. I do think they're a little further ahead of the curve. So maybe they employ better futurists than us, or we just don't listen to ours.
Well, yeah, and then probably have a better and a different tax structure so people can
Hmm.
contribute more to this, and they have more alternative energy sources they're
Hmm.
using, and we're still like only 1%, and some countries they're up 50%.
Hmm.
I just saw a thing on Norway, how tremendously successful they are in just about everything they do. So yeah, that's part of it. All
Yeah.
right, so number nine, maybe more people have heard of, and I've read some of his books also. That'd be Michio Kaku. He's a teacher at New York University, but he's a string theory, so he works on superstrings, which is one of the very difficult theoretical thing that can't be proven at this point. But he did write a book back in 2011. I'm surprised it's that long ago already, called Physics of the Future, and the subtitle is How Science Will Shape Human Destiny and Our Daily Lives by 2100.
Hmm.
So in that book, he does the near-term future, like we're going to come up with some things that will happen by 2030, just 8 years from now. And then he has a midterm future around 2050, and then he has things that will be happening roughly in some sense by 2100. So that's a really interesting way he structures that. And he's on a lot of the science shows. He explains all kinds of things. He's always on, and I'm sure he's written some books since then. But I really like him and the way he explains things.
Yeah,
Um,
I think one of the things he predicts is that we'll kind of transition from like an internet to a brain net. So he believes that like our thoughts, emotions, feelings, memories might be able to be transmitted instantly across the planet. I don't know exactly how,
yeah,
but he does talk about how it is possible, if we can get to that point, that tensions between people may diminish as people begin to feel and experience the pain of others. And that's
yeah,
like kind of fascinating. I'd be curious to know more
yeah.
about like how he envisions that
Right.
working.
Here I had a note saying that the computer will be able to read our minds, and that would be the next step. So again, it goes back to an ancient saying like, if you want to know how someone feels, walk a mile in their moccasins. So another Native American thing like the
Mm.
7 generations.
Hmm.
So all these things have been around for hundreds of years, but now they're coming out with the technology so that we can make all this practical for more people. even if they don't necessarily subscribe to some of those,
Yeah.
more far, looking ahead, better methods that Native Americans and people knew for, as I said, for hundreds of years. Okay, so this next person I had not heard of, but he's interesting too. So that'd be number 8, Christopher Ahlberg. So he's Swedish born. He has a PhD in computer science, and runs a company called Recorded Future. So basically, he developed software that will scan the internet for events and trends, and then that will be useful that we can use. So Google is using them, the CIA is using them.
Wow.
Yeah, so there is definitely, very, good thing, and they can predict things in the stock market, like frequent events. It's almost like AI and deep learning that we've talked about before. Computers with the right algorithms can pick up on all this because they can search the whole web like within seconds. But they wouldn't be as good as predicting elections because they don't happen like every day and every second.
Right,
It'd be
right.
good if there are lots of algorithm for elections, but they're not as accurate as some of the
It
stuff.
needs more
Yeah,
information, more
yeah,
frequency than
more
that.
information, constant
Mm-hmm.
learning, changing,
Mm-hmm.
updating. If it happens even once a month and they don't, the big ones only happen like twice a year, not even
Mm-hmm.
that. That'd be harder to predict. Like the collapse in 2008 and that type of thing. I don't think that was predicted. So
No.
that's just people that are really smart and can develop good computer system do that. So another one like that is number 7 on the list here, Dirk Helbing. So he's a German-born physicist, mathematician, and sociology. So he developed computer software that will again look at long-term changes and how they'll affect all the humans. But he has a project called Living Earth Simulator. So
Hmm.
this is worth over $1 billion.
Wow.
So it models any event for the Earth. Again, it's based on input and how good the computers and the modeling is. But
Like
then you
weather
can tell,
system type things?
yeah, like you probably remember that Biosphere 2, that's a miniature version of Earth
Okay.
that they had in Arizona. And they put like 20 people in there and they had all kinds of problems.
Hmm.
And it's still around. I guess you can visit it as a tourist. But this is, of course, I mean, I looked up some stuff online. There is some giant globe. But this is done through the computers. You're not going to put people in a living biosphere.
Hmm.
But it's a living Earth simulator. And then, so it's like the nervous system for the planet, which is
Hmm.
kind of what the internet and the World Wide Web is. So then you can predict all kinds of things like financial crises, epidemics. I mean, we knew about the last one. We just didn't have the things in place or didn't do the things we need to have done to prevent that, and then take the steps to avert or change anything like even an asteroid maybe hitting the Earth. We know what we can do to change that asteroid path, or if it's another crisis, or things could be, the next pandemic could be way bigger than the last one. So it's really important to have some of the projects and algorithms in place that we can learn about these and then do something about it.
Hmm.
That's really the important. If we can know about, like that movie Don't Look Up, we can see the asteroid that's about to hit us, but if we don't do anything about it, that's worthless. I mean, it was a bit of a farce on climate change or whatever. I didn't see it. I just saw some excerpts, but it's that type of thing. So
Awesome.
Dirk Helbing is working on actual things with that simulator
Yeah.
project to see what we can do about that. Okay, so number 6, he would have been higher on my list as Ray Kurzweil. Everyone probably has heard of him. He wrote a book called Singularity,
Mm-hmm.
saying by 2045, he put an actual date on it, so not too far in the future, the computers will be so much smarter than people that it'll be like computers and AI will potentially be able to run the world. Not that they will, because we have to work with them, but already we have the Internet of Things. I mean, they're already getting really smart. But 2045 is the actual date. So, and he predicted that based on that the computers will be 1 billion times smarter than all 8 billion of us put together. So right now,
Wow.
see it like a world brain. Like if you want to solve a problem, put a few minds on it, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
come at it from different aspects, and maybe you can solve it. But when this computer, this AI thing, will be 1 billion times smarter than all of us combined, then obviously, we would have no chance. Like Deep Blue beating chess, and the Go player was beaten, and all the things that computers can do now. So 2045 is like that point. And even if the dates are off by a couple of years, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But we're kind of on the path to do that. But the point is that we can blend with that and use the benefits of it and so on. And obviously we can't fight against that because I mean even now your airplane isn't even flown by your pilot more than about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's just an airplane. That's not all the amazing high tech things that will be possible. For medicine and nanotechnology and nanomedicine and all that specific things. This is just an airplane and we're already doing that.
Yeah, one of the other things too
Hmm.
from him is that he
Yeah.
believes that we'll spend, this is a little closer timeline, but that we'll spend more time in virtual and augmented realities.
Yeah.
And he believes that we will be able to even touch each other.
Hmm.
And that some of the people we visit will be avatars
Hmm.
by 2025, which is not that far away from now.
Yeah. Right.
Up until about 2030 is
Yeah.
2030 is what he thinks is a timeline for that.
Yeah.
And he also talks about kind of a lot of advancements in regards to reprogramming human biology away from diseases and aging processes. So he thinks we'll be able to deactivate cancer stem cells
Mhm.
or kind of slow or stop the progression of like heart disease. And yeah, he thinks that we'll also be able to, like, instead of a living will, you have like a living digital version of yourself that people will be able to like interact with in,
Mhm.
after you're long dead, which we've seen that in movies too.
Yeah,
But
right.
you
If
know
an actor passed away, they're still in the next movie. And
yeah.
we've seen it with performances. They projected somebody on stage doing a rap performance
Yeah,
with other
yeah.
live people. So, and then actually, Michio Kaku said some things too. He said you could project he called it a digital soul, but it's basically downloading the image like Ray. And you could go to the moon with all the info we know about the moon, that avatar. You could go to the moon right now or Mars or any other place that we know something about. I mean, otherwise you're just making it up
Yeah.
totally. And you can go there right now and you could walk around, you could collect your own moon rocks and all that, and you don't have to become an astronaut and spend the 3 days flying there. You could do that right now.
Nice.
Those are some great points.
Neat.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. So number five is William Gibson. He's an author. Basically, I read one of his books when I was taking some other courses in college. So he wrote books like Zero History, The Neuromancer. He invented the term cyberspace back in 1982. He
Wow.
pictured an internet, again, way ahead of time, like Edwin Toffler might have too. But Gibson is still around. He's basically living in Vancouver, Canada, but he's American born, and he writes like all these books. It's more like a sci-fi thing, but it's based on. I mean, he doesn't run computer programs to actually predict it. It's in his mind. He's sometimes called a latter-day Jules Verne because he
Yeah.
can see the
He's
future.
more like a writer.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
He doesn't. He's not a mathematician or a physicist that can develop the programs. He just writes about it
Yeah.
and thinks about it and so on. Okay, so number four is an interesting person I hadn't heard of before, but I did some more research on him. Even watch a short segment of him with Joe Rogan because Joe talks to all these great people, but his things are 3 hours long. Our program is a little half an hour, and there's not one person. We're trying to cover a lot of things, just kind of generally. So that's Aubrey de Grey. So he's British born. He's working on the fountain of youth, basically. He's a biologist, a biomedical gerontologist, but he's doing actual research with genes to basically extend your life as far as possible. And he's saying that there's about a 30% chance that the first person that will live to be 1,000 years old is actually alive right now. So he's trying to invent
Wow.
things with, CRISPR and all the different methods to actually extend life that way.
Wow.
So that's, I mean, yeah, I mean, he basically has something called longevity escape velocity. So if he can get the genes to stop aging, there is some point, because theoretically there's nothing saying that you have to age. It's just like wearing down like a machine. So
Yeah.
if you could stop that wearing down process of humans, in any number of ways. I mean, obviously we're not there yet. There's stem cells. There's all kinds of ways you can do this rejuvenation and things. Then you could basically. There's no reason why you couldn't basically live forever. But he's actually. I don't know if he's the one who started, but there's a cryogenic freezing. People are actually, I think, uh, paying him or a company like his. There's a lot of research going into this, and people like Bezos are putting billions of dollars into this for themselves and for others.
Yeah, right for them.
It's getting it's getting more serious now. A few years ago, he was just kind of written off as a quack, but now billions of dollars, some big companies are coming up so that you could freeze the person just after they die, and then when the cure for the disease that killed them has come up with, then they could unfreeze them, say in 100 years, and apply that cure, and they'd still be alive.
Why can't it ever be like
Yeah.
people you want to be here forever. It's always the people you don't want to be here.
Well, it's beside the point of whether or not you like Jeff Bezos in particular. I don't know if Elon Musk is buying into it, but
Eh,
other people are. Ellison and the PayPal got Peter Thiel. They're buying in with billions of dollars to do this. So if they're spending that much on this, and you would think this would be the ultimate problem, even more so than an asteroid hitting us or climate change, being able to live not just longer. Eventually, his point is to try to make us live longer until we get to the point that we could live forever based on some of those other things that we've
yeah.
discovered. But so and actually, it was interesting how he came about this. He just wanted to be of use, contribute to the world in some different way.
Mm,
He was trying to become a good piano player, but he didn't want to practice. And then he thought even if he ever got good, there's thousands of better piano players around. But if he did something specific and different with his biology and other background, then he could, add more to society than just becoming another good piano player. So that applies
mm,
to me. So that's kind of interesting. His reasoning why he wanted to do this different. So hopefully he's onto something, of course,
yep.
that will work. But if it's getting billions of dollars in research, I'm sure it is. All right, so that's all be great. Then number three, I have Paul Roberts. He's a journalist. He came up with a book called The End of Oil back in 2004, which is kind of interesting because I know Thomas Hartman has written some books since then. So basically, of course, we are going to run out of oil at some point.
Hmm.
So this has an interesting subtitle, On the Edge of a Perilous New World. Um, yeah, on the edge of a perilous new world. So basically, of course, that's kind of happening. I mean, it's not over yet. We may have lots of reserves left, but we should be aware of what we need to do when that happens. So he
Yeah.
again, he didn't develop the programs to scan the net for trends, but he wrote the book and whatever research he did.
It's a little older, so it's not news to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2004. I know. At least we had an internet by then, so
Yeah.
he could probably use that to do something. And that whole term peak oil, of course, is around. And we've done programs on, developing alternative energy sources, and
Yep.
that contributes to climate change, which we just, even our last program with Dr.
Hmm.
Zhang was about that. Okay, so number two, I've actually never heard of her. Someone named Faith Popcorn.
I love it.
I don't even know if that's her real name. I didn't chance to do more research on her, but she's called the Nostradamus of marketing. She's from New York, and she runs, I don't know if it's a company, it's called the Brain Reserve. So I guess she's predicting all kinds of things in marketing.
Hmm.
I didn't get more into her. And then number one on this list, and I do kind of know him because I have read his book, and that's John Nesbitt. So in 1982, he wrote a book called Megatrends. So again, before the internet, but in 2010, he wrote a book called China's Megatrends, 10 New Directions Transforming Our Lives. So just to be aware of them and whatever processes he used to figure this out, we should be aware of them and know what we can do about them and so on.
Hmm.
Yeah, John Nesbitt.
Wow.
So he
Yeah.
was the one, I would have put other people on like Buckminster Fuller, Arthur C.
Yeah.
Clarke,
Hmm.
Nikola Tesla. Even he was so far ahead of his time in electricity, free energy for everybody. I mean, you would think that's an ultimate thing, just like trying to live forever. All these are ultimate goals you would want to try to get to. So there's lots of other people, but this was a list someone came up with, and I hadn't heard of about half of these people.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, thanks, Bernie. That's a really nice overview of some of the top futurists in our day. I know some of them aren't around, like the first one, but
Yeah.
yeah. So next time, probably not our next episode, but we'll do a show in the future about some of the predictions that these futurists think will happen in our near future, near meaning 10, 20, 30 years.
Actually, even
um,
just by 2030.
yeah, by
I'm going to
2030.
come up with a list of 10 things that will happen by 20, just about applying to all of our listeners.
Awesome.
Just 8 years.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Bernie. That was a great run through. And hopefully, you as a listener learned about somebody new and look into futurism and see if there's something that sparks your interest there. You have been listening to Scientifically Speaking here on WMPG with myself and Bernie. Stay tuned for Something for the Weekend with Anella. And from your favorite nerds, stay safe and enjoy your summer.